Okay, I'm going to, I told you I'm going to talk about reasonable disclosure and lessons that I learned from this whole Cisco Gate lawsuit. But for today, I want to try a new presentation style. I've tried it actually once before, so it's not totally new. And it's a style I stole basically from the presentationzen.com website. They have several different ideas on how you should present information, and I'm going to try one of them. And I'm going for the Yoda versus Darth Vader model. So, for example, in the Yoda model, you see that Yoda's out front. He's not blocking the screen. The screen has very little information on it. It's very clear to understand. And he looks kind of serene, looks like he knows what he's about to talk about. And then on the other hand, we've got the Darth Vader model. And Darth is just overwhelming you with information. He just wants to let you know everything all at once. You know, from bringing order to the galaxy, I love the best part at the bottom. You know, for more information, please see my website at. He's just trying to get to you all at once. He's blocking the view. The text isn't very easy to read. He's got way too many bullet points. So I'm thinking, well, that's the Force versus the dark side. What can that really be like? But then we've got Steve Jobs versus Bill G. Steve's up here. He's all slick. He's got you focused on the key points. There's a chip or there's a disk. There's OS 9 or there's OS X. Very straightforward. He's off to the side. You want to guess what's on the next slide? You got Bill. Bill's trying to explain his whole product life cycle to you. He's engaging, he's blocking. You can spend 10 minutes and not even understand what's going on with that slide. You know somebody got paid about $15,000 to build that thing. So, I'm going to try to be Yoda. That's my whole goal. Now, I am not Yoda, but I have been in the presence of Yoda. And I don't know if you know who Robert Morris Sr. is, but he's sort of like the grandfather of crypto at the NSA. And if you look at his Wikipedia site, you can see he basically did everything. And his son also invented the first internet worm, Robert Morris Jr. So I'm hoping that by standing next to him, I've osmotically learned some information that I can pass on to you today. So my plan then is to offer some insight into the self-interests of people who are involved in the disclosure debate. And then I'm going to illustrate some of those differences with my war story here. And then to be sort of interactive throughout the war story, every time I had a sort of a critical decision point, I'm going to let you know what it was, and then I want to see by a show of hands if you guys would have made sort of the same decision I made, or would you have made a different decision. So, in the context of this talk, who am I? Well, let me see. When I was 13, I had this IBM PC2 dual double-sided disk drives, Epson FX80 printer, and I quickly took it apart, tried to overclock it, and then I found one of these at Boeing Surplus in Seattle. So I hooked it up to a little, it's 110 baud, and then later on I got a 300 baud acoustic coupler modem. And I still remember the first underground hacking bulletin board I dialed, 244-6252. It's a phone number. I can't ever forget it. Then I watched this movie, War Games, and it was game over. I got addicted really early on. And the interesting thing is, some of the friends I met who also had seen War Games were really complaining about it. They said, this sucks. Now everybody knows about war dialing. The secret is out. Everybody's going to lock up their modem pools. They're going to assign passwords. We're not going to be able to hack anymore since this movie came out. And yeah, that was 20 years ago. And hacking has not slowed down. So let's see. I ended up going to college. College was good, went to Gonzaga. Then I went to law school, and I ended up dropping out because I did not like law school. It's not very, does not appeal to me. So instead, in 1993, I started DEF CON. That's pretty much everybody who was at DEF CON. There's some notables here. Let's see, there's the Jackal, there's Dune, Noid, there's LF1 who started, or took over BugTrack, and there's me wedged into that car. And then I started a business which promptly failed. It was a web integration business. Back then, the only people paying for selling things online were porn companies, and they don't normally pay their bills on time. So I went to work for the man at Ernst & Young, and then I started the professional services group over at Secure Computing, which later became Guardant. And then in '97, I started the Black Hat Briefings, which I sold in 2005 to a media company called CMP. And because I now no longer work for myself, I get a boss. And that's my boss, and that's me, and that's my beer. So life is pretty good with my boss. He's easy to get along with. Now let's see. A word about disclosure. Start this up. I thought this was sort of a self-evident topic that had been dead like for a decade. Every time this topic comes up, I get a little frustrated because I get this deja vu feeling like, haven't we been here before? Why do we keep talking about this stuff? It will not go away. And part of me thinks it's because it's an interesting topic that people who are new to security get all excited about. It's like some moral dilemma that they can wrap their head around, and they get all excited. And it's been nicely summarized for years and years and years. And this is like a very small sampling of the hundreds and hundreds of people who've done talks and presentations on it, looking at it from different angles. But no matter what, this topic is like not dying. It's people just keep talking about it. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, but I want to throw in my own little version of it. And let me just quickly define some of our models before we get going. There's the full disclosure model, which is sort of typified by full disclosure mailing list, which is you just reveal everything. Don't hold back any of the zero-day details. Release exploit code. And this is sort of favored by researchers, enthusiasts, nonprofits, people who don't really have anything to lose and everything to gain. Then you have sort of responsible disclosure, which is, I would say, sort of the Bugtrack model. Vendors, conferences, quote-unquote professionals, they want to get the credit for inventing something cool, but they don't want any of the risks. Sort of like they want the best of both worlds. Limited disclosure with no specifics. I think that's what Microsoft and every vendor in the world would prefer. There is a bug, patch your stuff, and then they don't give you any details. And then there's zero disclosure, which is sort of like Dave up here in the front. Raise your hand, Dave. Yay! I like the zero disclosure model because it's so simple. You just don't say anything. Notice how it's typified by busy researchers and criminals down there. You like that? That's good. And then here are some of your ideologies. And I stole this slide from The Politics of Vulnerabilities by Scott Blake. It was the coolest slide he had, so I took it. And you can see the people who adhere to this. I live in this middle world. I live in the responsible disclosure world as a conference kind of guy. So this is where I'm going to focus. This is what I try to adhere to. I love people to release vulnerability details. If they release exploits, that's fine too, as long as they've notified the vendors. If they haven't notified the vendors and they release zero-day, I'm not going to cry about it, but as a professional, it's probably the responsible thing to do is give the vendor a heads up. And this is where all the argument comes from. How much of a heads up do you give the vendor? Do you give them a day, a week? You know, if you're going to speak at Black Hat and you have some zero-day and you want to tell the vendor about it, do you tell them an hour ahead of time? Or you tell Apple ahead of time, you know, on the phone, sort of like David Maynor? Or do you give them weeks and weeks and weeks? So you start arguing about what is reasonable. And everybody pretty much agrees that 1 day of notice is not reasonable. 100 days is also not reasonable. In between, I think it's pretty much anybody can argue what is reasonable. So when I was looking for a story I could tell to illustrate some of these points, I was thinking, well, what have I been near? I've been sort of kind of close to Dmitry Skylarov, Mike Lynn, David Maynor, Chris Paget, IOActive thing with RFID reader and HID. And I had to pick a war story, right? What am I going to pick? LCOM, Cisco, Apple, HID? I think Cisco illustrates everything perfectly because not only was I involved in it, I could see what was happening on every other front. I could see what was happening to Mike. I could hear Mike's attorney talking to Mike. I could see everything that was going on. And I was there from the very beginning. So I want to now get into the guts of the talk, which is the story here. I'm going to introduce the players. We've got Black Hat. This is at 2005. I had some pretty clear-cut goals in 2005. This was the year I was trying to sell my business. I've been trying to sell Black Hat for a number of years, and this year I finally had some people there who were maybe going to give me some money. So I was pretty excited. I had like 6 companies there that might buy Black Hat. And so I needed to have a great conference, and at the point in time, it was the largest one I'd ever done. And I have a tradition of gambling $20 in quarters every year, and I either walk away with more money or I walk away with no money. And I always drink a beer. So my goals are very clear-cut. I'm going to use this next slide to illustrate all the decision points that happen along the way. Sort of a timeline on the left, actions on the right, and we'll start off at the very beginning. Mike Lin submits a talk he calls the Holy Grail, Cisco iOS Cell Code and Remote Execution. So that's a pretty provocative title. This is basically his submission email he sends in. And you can see, I don't know how well you can see, I think I didn't highlight it very easily. If you look at this, look at the reasons at the bottom. What are the 3 most important reasons why this is a quality Black Hat talk? It's never been done before. Sure, FX came close, but I'm talking about reliable, repeatable, remote execution of arbitrary code. Playing with critical infrastructure is exciting. And reason 3, iOS shellcode, iOS backdoors, the end of the world, etc., etc. So, who would accept this talk? Do you accept this talk? Yes. You would be an idiot to not accept this talk. And in accepting the talk, there's this title called Transfer of Copyright. And everybody has to sign this. It's basically that we, as Black Hat, have permission to produce conference CDs and post your slides on the web and not get sued by you or your company. So there are these 2 critical little sentences here. That you've obtained permission to give Black Hat permission to publish materials, and Black Hat has permissions to duplicate, record, redistribute, do whatever we want with this stuff. That seems pretty clear, doesn't it? And since Mike was working for ISS, he had to have buy-off by his managers and PR before he could submit the talk. So this is all agreed to before his presentation even arrived. So this happens in late February 2005. We already decided that we accept it. We'd be an idiot not to accept this. So now we've got Mike. Mike and Black Hat. Everything's good. Planning for the conference, early June comes along. We get a call from one of Mike's friends at ISS. Just wondering, hey, is it okay if Mike could change some of his slide materials? Is that okay? Could we update a slide or 2? Which is kind of strange because normally the speaker is the person who asks to see if materials could be changed. So let me see. We tell him it's okay. You can change materials at any time up to the print deadline. And why is it not advancing? Please advance. Oh, yes, I will destroy you. So we've got 4 months that go by. And this thing is not presenting anymore. Oh, damn it. There we go. So, yes, you can change the materials up until the print deadline. No big deal. Now it's late June. Now we're getting close to the print deadline. We've got books to produce, CDs to produce, and we get a second call from Mike's friend, who shall remain nameless. Wondering, what would it take to change the materials? Can we still change the materials, and what would it take? And so we sort of assumed Mike was being lazy, or Mike had just talked to his friend because his friend was on a first-name basis, and just kind of wondering what could happen if it could still be changed. And we're saying, yeah, you can still change, but it's getting pretty late. So we have to find out. We find out what the print deadlines are, and we find out that it costs the same amount of money. We can change all the slide material, won't cost us a dime more. We can do it right now. If you turn in the materials and pull the slide stuff, we can do it this second. No big deal. Then we get this email, priority, urgent, from Renee Wagner. The key players here are, you've got Carl Burns,